flowers and the rain. I see you between the lines of a sweet refrain. I'm so blessed, my Lord, I can see you. Even when I'm lonely and in pain, I see you in the beauty of the stars at night. I see you in my life, I feel alright. I see you, Lord, in sorrow and in happiness. I see you in the glory of sweet success. I see you, Lord, every hour, every day. I can see you, Lord, whenever I pray. I'm so blessed, my Lord, I can see you in the smile of a baby, sweet and true. I can see you in the eyes of my very best friends. I see you in these bonds, just like your love that never ends. I see you, Lord, in sorrow and in happiness. I see you in the glory of sweet success. I see you, Lord, every hour, every day. I can see you, Lord, whenever I pray. I see you, Lord, in sorrow and in happiness. I see you with the glory of sweet success. I see you, Lord, every hour, every day. I can see you, Lord, whenever I pray. I pray. I can see you, Lord, whenever I pray. I see you, Lord.
Good day, everyone. I am Mariel T. Claro, Teacher 3 of San Jose Elementary School in our district, and our group will be presenting the skills in handling intercultural conflict. Before that, allow me to introduce to you the members of Group 4. First on the list is Miss Jane Heras, School Head of Maykatmon Elementary School in our district, who will discuss intercultural awareness. Next one is Mr. Arnel Roldan, School Head of Concepcion Elementary School in Mana North District, who will share about intercultural empathy. To be followed by Miss Mary Sue Lacambine Romero, Faculty Member of Universidad de Santa Isabel, who will talk about mindful listening and reframing. Next is Miss Christine Gorobat, Senior High School Teacher of San Juan National High School, Libmanan District, who will shed light on the importance of collaborative dialogue in handling intercultural conflict. And yours truly, who will discuss the definition and 3 most likely causes of intercultural conflict. Our presentation has 3 main focus. The first one is to define intercultural conflict. Second is to explain the causes of intercultural conflict. And third is to identify the skills in handling intercultural conflict. So what is intercultural conflict? According to Tintume and Otzel 2001, intercultural conflict is the perceived or actual incompatibility of cultural values, norms, goals, orientations, scarce resources, processes, or even outcomes between a minimum of 2 parties involved. Meaning, the persons involved in the intercultural conflict experience emotional frustration or struggle brought by diverse cultural values, goals, and orientations. The perception might be that the goals are mutually exclusive, or there's not enough resources to go around, or maybe the other person disagrees about the process, or dissatisfied with outcomes or result of a project. So what happens when inappropriate or ineffective conflict behaviors continue? The miscommunication can spiral into a complex intercultural conflict situation. That is why we, as leaders and future leaders in the academe, must know how to handle intercultural conflict brought by different orientations, perceptions, beliefs, and values. So before we jump into the skills in handling intercultural conflict, which will further be discussed by my team members, allow me to share with you the 3 most likely causes of intercultural conflict. The first one is ethnocentrism, which refers to an individual's belief that his own culture and way of doing things is the right way. In short, ethnocentric people perceive that the way they do things is right and the way the other person does is wrong. In a contemporary world, ethnocentrism refers to the natural tendency or inclination of a person to view reality from their own cultural experience and perspective. Meaning, ethnocentric persons tend to compare, evaluate, or even judge another culture based upon the values and standards set in one's own culture. So it then implies that one's own culture becomes a frame of reference to judge other cultures, practices, behaviors, beliefs, traditions, and people, instead of using the standards of the particular culture involved. And since you consider your own culture as superior and the other culture is viewed as inferior, ethnocentric persons are blind to any other realities. For example, a leader who thinks that his way is the right way will cause upset with his subordinates, fail to listen to their needs, undermine their approaches, and quite likely demotivate them as well. Another example also applies when it comes to our personal relationship. Someone who feels his culture is superior and tries to enforce it will either destroy the relationship or create a situation in which their partner is forced to ignore her own culture and adapt to another, something that will undoubtedly cause resentment and abuse. So the concept of ethnocentrism is said to be the enemy of a productive and happy multicultural workplace. And according to conflict specialist, the aviary group, if ethnocentrism is allowed to infiltrate the workplace, the result is often intra-group conflict fueled by favoritism, exclusion, and cliquish behavior, where you tend to become unfriendly to people who are not part of your group. And when conflict is rampant, performance and productivity in the workplace suffer. So, how can we avoid ethnocentrism and resultant conflicts in the workplace? It is suggested that leaders as well as the employees objectively analyze their own culture and biases, learn about other cultures, and always strive to maintain open channels of communication. The second most likely cause of intercultural conflict is the differences in cultural values. When we say cultural values, these are the core principles and ideals which an entire community exists. If people in the organization do not know how to respect and tolerate cultural differences in the workplace, this can lead to some problems resulting to culture clash or intercultural conflict. Because conflict is triggered when there are cultural differences between individuals within an organization, which generally occurs in the context that individuals are not willing to understand each other's diversity in cultures. Take, for example, someone who places a great deal of value on time. You may even see time as money and resent people who waste his time. If you put this person with someone who doesn't place value on time, like for example, a person who arrives 30 minutes late from their agreed meeting time, then this can provide a ground for intercultural conflict. In a different scenario, intercultural conflict is very possible if someone who values continuity is required to work closely with someone who values change. Change can be perceived as threatening the status quo and harmony by those who value continuity. They may therefore not embrace it as quickly, may even be seen by others to be obstructing the goals of the organization. The third most likely cause of intercultural conflict is cultural communication. Different cultures have their own communication rules and their own ways of exchanging messages. It can be through direct or indirect, verbal or nonverbal communication, or even communicating in low context or high context cultures. In fact, communication is always in a cultural context and includes words, intonations, gestures, a continuum of styles, and shared meaning. That is why cultural communication is really important to avoid intercultural conflict, because by learning how to communicate with diverse individuals can lead to effective intercultural communication that will result to stronger relationships, improved performance, and greater employee satisfaction.
The first skill in handling intercultural conflict is intercultural awareness. So what is intercultural awareness? Intercultural awareness is the knowledge, awareness, and acceptance of one's own culture and of another culture. It involves two qualities. One is the awareness of one's own culture. The other is the awareness of another culture. In other words, it is the ability of standing back from our point and becoming aware of not only our own cultural values, beliefs, and perceptions, but also those of other cultures. And in order to do that, we need to have an in-depth knowledge of other people's culture to understand their behaviors. Because when you have strong sense of awareness, it helps you distinguish which of your thoughts are relevant, that should be acted upon, and which thoughts are intrusive or disruptive to daily life. We have to keep in mind that misinterpretations occur primarily when we are not aware of our own behavioral rules and project them onto others. In the absence of intercultural awareness, we tend to misinterpret the verbal and the non-verbal behavior of the person with whom we interact. What usually happens when values are out of alignment, people work towards different goals with different intentions and with different outcomes. This can damage work relationships, productivity, job satisfaction, and creative potential. So, how can being culturally aware benefit us in the workplace? Developing culturally literate and aware employees can enhance communication, productivity, and unity in the workplace. I have here an example of a situation depicting how intercultural awareness works. For example, in the workplace, Teacher Leia is a type of teacher who engaged in a meeting and gives suggestions or comments to make a project or program become successful. She knows how to make a stand for the sake of her colleagues if things are not right. While on the other hand, we have Teacher Lisa of the same age with Teacher Leia. She never questions nor gives suggestions in a meeting. In short, she is a passive type of teacher and prefers to follow the instructions given by the school head. She prefers to be silent and make her comments to herself. Applying intercultural awareness, teachers in the school may have different take on the values and beliefs projected by Teacher Leia and Lisa. Teacher Leia might misunderstood or conclude that Teacher Lisa is playing safe and only thinks of herself. That is why she never actively engaged in a meeting or discourse to avoid misunderstanding or any conflict that might arise. Teacher Leia must be aware of the values of Teacher Lisa and must acknowledge that not all teachers have the same values and beliefs as hers. We have to widen our perspective that maybe Teacher Lisa is an introvert type of person and her way of adapting in the workplace is by doing her job accordingly and following directions obediently. By understanding the attitudes and perceptions of both teachers, we can begin to identify better ways to respect and support each other regardless of our cultural differences and preferences.
No individual has ever been able to get a complete understanding of reality. Neither has any single culture. And honestly, probably nobody ever will. By integrating the different perspectives of the different cultures into a single whole, we're able of growing beyond the restraint of the cultural framework that has been ingrained into us since our childhood. Intercultural empathy is about placing oneself in the cultural background of another. It means understanding others by entering their world or standing in somebody else's shoes. It is a systematic way of repositioning ourselves to see and to experience events, cultures, and beliefs from the other view and to gain alternative insights in dealing with them. Intercultural empathy leads us not only to experience the feelings of another, but also to reflect on those feelings and compare them to our own. Intercultural empathy is being able to effectively communicate one's understanding of that cultural world. Only when one truly understands what the other is thinking and behaving can he be able to get access to ideal communication. When the communicator consciously and willingly shifts from one's own cultural frame of reference and actively projects oneself in another culture without abandoning one's perspective on the situation, it will bring an active consequence. Intercultural empathy is the ability to build good relationships and achieve smooth intercultural communication. It is important to emphasize that cultural empathy is not sympathy with, agreement with, or identification with a specific culture. Rather, it is the appropriate understanding of a culture's values and beliefs. It has been described as seeing the world through another's eyes, hearing as they might hear, and feeling and experiencing their internal world, which does not involve mixing your thoughts and actions with those of the client. Intercultural empathy is one of the key skills needed to develop a real understanding across cultures. Essentially, it consists of the three dimensions: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. Cognitive empathy, the ability to put ourselves into the perspective of the other person and imagine how he or she perceives a particular situation. This refers to how well an individual can perceive and understand the emotions of another. Cognitive empathy, also known as empathetic accuracy, involves having more complete and accurate knowledge about the contents of another person's mind, including how the person feels. Hodge and Meyer say, cognitive empathy is more like a skill. Humans learn to recognize and understand others' emotional states as a way to process emotions and behavior. Emotional empathy, the ability to imagine the feelings that the other is feeling in a particular situation while also being able to feel these emotions ourselves. Emotional empathy consists of three separate components. Hodge and Meyer say, the first is feeling the same emotion as another person. The second component, personal distress, refers to one's own feelings of distress in response to perceiving another's plight. The third emotional component, feeling compassion for another person, is the one most frequently associated with the study of empathy. Behavioral empathy, the ability to act in a way that shows our understanding of the other person and give him or her the feeling that we care. Somebody who has behavioral empathy will be able to adjust his behavior in a way to adjust himself to the needs and feelings of the other person. Somebody who only has behavioral empathy cannot understand the other person on a cognitive or emotional level, will adjust his behavior in a way that will lead to results that are either not making the situation better or making it worse than it was before. Consequently, to develop a degree of intercultural empathy that help us to not only understand but also adjust our behavior according to the emotional situation of the other person, we need to develop all three skills. When we try to develop our skills in intercultural empathy, we need to work on all of its three dimensions at the same time. So, what are the steps can we take to become more interculturally empathetic? First, we need to be able to understand the values, beliefs, and behavioral patterns of the other person's cultural background. To do so, we can take different steps such as observing the other culture's behavioral pattern, getting a cultural mentor who explains the behavior and underlying values and beliefs to us, as well as researching by reading about it online or from books on the subject. Next, we need to regularly exercise our ability to put ourselves into the perspective of the other person. We need constantly ask ourselves the question, how does the other person see this issue? Or, if I were the other person, how would I think about this issue? Second, we need to develop our ability to understand the other person's feelings and experience them ourselves. To do so, we need to ask ourselves questions like, how is the other person feeling right now? If I were the other person, how would I feel right now? What factors are likely to affect how the other person is feeling right now? At the same time, we also need to start developing the habit of asking other people how they are feeling about certain situations. If we do not do this, then our practice is nothing more but a guessing game. Without getting feedback as to whether or not our assumptions are correct, we will never be able to recognize patterns underlying other people's behavior. Third, we need to develop our ability to adjust our behavior according to the needs of other person. To do this, we can ask ourselves questions like this. How can I adjust my behavior in a way that will improve the other person's emotional condition? How can I adjust my behavior in a way in line with the other person's values, beliefs, and assumptions about the world. Putting myself into the perspective of the other person, what steps can I take that is likely to make him or her feel appreciated? Before I end, allow me to leave you some questions for your reflection. What situation have you faced where you were simply unable to understand the other person's perspective? What steps have you taken to improve your ability to understand him or her? That's end my report. Thank you.
Have you ever stopped and realized in a group conversation, meeting, or even just a talk with a friend that you really don't even know what you're talking about? If you're like most people, this happens quite frequently. The fourth skill in handling intercultural conflict is mindful listening and reframing. While you may be interested in the topic at hand, your mind will still drift off to thinking about something else that is going on in your life, which is why practicing mindful listening can be a crucial part of a meaningful and attentive conversation. Mindfulness is the practice of paying purposeful attention to the present moment without making any judgments. It encourages one to be aware of the present and let go of worries or anxieties, along with any physical or emotional reactions you may have to the outside influences. Mindful listening then allows one to listen without judgment, criticism, or interruption, while being aware of internal thoughts and reactions that may get in the way of effective communication. Studies have suggested that the average person only remembers 25% of what someone has told them only a few minutes prior to being asked. In conflict negotiation process, new information crucial to the interaction is acquired, and this means that both conflict parties need to learn to listen mindfully to each other, even when disagreeing. The disputant needs to listen with focused attentiveness to the cultural and personal assumptions being expressed and shift their conflict's perspective to reflect things from the other partner's perspective. The goal of mindful listening is to stop your running thoughts so you can hear the message that is being shared with you, and so the speaker can feel understood. Mindful listening in this way requires you to give your full focus to the person who is talking and to use your senses to understand their words and emotions. According to Langers in 1997, the concept of mindfulness includes the following characteristics. 1. Learning to see behavior or information presented in conflict as novel or fresh. 2. Learning to view conflict situation from several vantage points or perspective. 3. Learning to attend to conflict contexts and the person in whom we are perceiving the bad behavior. And lastly, learning to create new categories through which conflict behavior may be understood. Being heard is so close to being loved. Mindful listening increases your empathy because you will be taking the time and energy to put yourself in someone else's position and really listen to what they are saying and their motivations behind engaging in the conversation with you. Mindful listening helps make stronger connections. If you're able to give someone your full attention by listening in a mindful way, you'll be able to get to know them on a level that you otherwise would miss. Mindful listening improves your communication with colleagues, encouraging collaboration and initiative. With proper communication, you and your colleagues will be able to listen to each other, to learn about each other's ideas and thoughts about possible projects. Mindful listening boosts workplace morale because employees feel they are appreciated and listened to. When people feel they are being listened to, they feel as if they are a part of the group. Mindful listening improves observational skills, allowing leaders to choose the best persons for projects and to delegate tasks to. When you are listening closely to someone, you may pick up on subtle things that you would not otherwise notice. A few examples of mindful listening include repeating back what someone else has said, but put it in your own words. This will allow your speaking partner to know that you have been listening and comprehending what they have been talking about. Encourage your speaking partner to tell you more by nodding and smiling, and even asking them to tell you more. This will let them know that you are interested. Take a quick pause before responding to what the other person has been saying. Use this time to absorb what they said without any judgment. Put aside any distractions like your phone or any other gadget. It makes it seem like what the speaker is saying is not very important. Before a conversation even starts, you should set the intention to listen mindfully. Remind yourself this is your time to give someone else your full attention and respect their willingness to take the time to talk to you. Mindful reframing, on the other hand, means creating alternative context to frame your understanding of the conflict behavior. Largely because creating new context to understand the conflict behavior may redefine your interpretation and reaction to the behavior or conflict event. This involves readiness to shift from ethnocentric lens to ethno-relative one, and the possibility to understand conflict from other person's cultural frame of reference. This is seen in the long-standing notion of viewing glass as half empty or half full. Examples of reframing include the following: looking at problems as opportunity, or a mistake as a chance to learn or grow. A delay or cancellation is an opportunity to practice patience or mindfulness. A rejection as evidence of having the courage to take a risk. Chaos or a busy schedule as a reminder that we are fully engaged in life. Or quarantine as a chance for self-reflection and personal growth. While there is undeniable value in learning to accept the things we cannot change, based on available research, there is also value in learning to see options where we might not have noticed them before. Reframing is a powerful tool that helps us see something in a new way, offering us the possibility of gaining new understanding and insights through alternative ways of viewing your experiences. It can be particularly helpful when faced with challenging experiences or feelings towards oneself or with the people we interact with. This ends my part of the report. Thank you everyone for listening and have a blessed afternoon.
Intercultural conflict occurs when emotional frustrations, different expectations in conjunction with perceived incompatibility of values, characters, and norms are appropriately or inappropriately expressed through language. Miscommunication can easily take its way across situations and individuals when there is no proper agreement. One of the skills of handling this conflict is through collaborative dialogue. Collaborative dialogue is defined by Swain as a dialogue in which speakers are engaged in problem solving and knowledge building. During collaborative dialogue, one or both speakers may refine their knowledge or come to a new or deeper understanding of a phenomenon. The speakers are using as a cognitive tool to mediate their own thinking and that of others. This means that speaking produces an utterance, a product that can be questioned, added to, discredited, and so forth. This action of co-constructing meaning is collaborative dialogue and is a source of language, of learning, and development. Dialogue may be only the beginning point for a reaching agreement or compromise. But without it, participants have little possibility of either. The goals of sustainable development and social cohesion require that culturally diverse groups learn to engage in intercultural dialogue. Luckily, intercultural dialogue is both learnable and teachable. To engage in dialogue is to engage in a learning conversation. In Peirce and Dinojan's term, dialogue is transformative conversation. Penman suggests any dialogue requires a commitment to mutual collaboration. To recall, dialogue derives from the Greek term dia and logos, widely translated and wrongly understood because of the confusion between duo and dia. It doesn't mean a conversation between two persons or two groups, but an acceptance by two participants or more that they will compare and contrast their respective arguments. The prefix dia is equivalent to the Latin term trans, connoting a considerable shift in space, time, substance, or thought. Dialogue is not designed to lead to a definitive conclusion. It is constantly renewed means of reinitiating the thinking process, of questioning certainties, and of progressing from discovery to discovery. Intercultural dialogue encourages readiness to question well-established value-based certainties by bringing reason, emotion, and creativity into play in order to find new shared understandings. By doing so, it goes far beyond mere negotiation, where mainly political, economic, and geopolitical interests are at stake. It is a process that comprises an open and respectful exchange of views between individuals and groups with different ethnic, cultural, religious, and linguistic backgrounds and heritage on the basis of mutual understanding and respect. According to the Public Dialogue Consortium, dialogue is inclusive rather than exclusive. The freedom to speak is joined to the right to be heard and the responsibility to listen. Differences are treated as resources rather than barriers. Conflict is handled collaboratively rather than adversarially. And decisions are made creatively rather than defensively. These characteristics would serve as a good beginning of any intercultural dialogue. Although common usage refers to cultures interacting or holding dialogues, it is actually individuals who interact and who hold intercultural dialogues, not the cultures themselves. Similarly, it is individuals who manage their interactions more or less interculturally competently. The complication is that one person in an interaction cannot be interculturally competent alone, for interaction is a process co-constructed jointly by all participants. If together participants manage well, then together they have been interculturally competent. If not, then it is simply inaccurate to say one of them was competent and the other was incompetent. Rather, all must admit that together they were incompetent. This notion of co-construction, of jointly making our interactions with others, rests at the heart of any intercultural encounter. Each encounter is about making something, creating something, jointly with at least one other person. And so the process of interaction must serve as focus. In any case, intercultural dialogue is the first step to taking advantage of different cultural traditions and histories to expand the list of possible solutions to common problems. Intercultural dialogue is thus an essential tool in the effort to resolve intercultural conflicts peacefully and a precondition for cultivating a culture of peace.
And that ends the presentation of Group 4. I am Mariel Claro, reminding everyone that the quality of lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but on how we respond to them. Thank you for listening, and once again, good morning.